Hey there, it's Nate Walker back to record, this time for a Core Set 2019 Sealed League. So the set just came out on Magic Online today and got home from work and just opening my first sealed pull. So we're going to go through the deck building here. I did a set review of the commons and uncommons for my website on newcompassgames.com. And I'll put a link to that in the comments section of the YouTube video, and I'll also post this video on the website as well. Now, I don't think that I'll be going through all of the gameplay, because I think with sealed deck, at least early part of the format, and the most important thing is going through the deck building. The games, especially for Core Set, probably play out mostly as you would expect. And there are some things to learn about cards that we haven't played with, and interactions that we haven't maybe seen yet in the set. But I'm sure you'll get that from a lot of other sources. So we'll just go through the deck build here, and I'll put in the comments later on how the deck performed, and maybe some thoughts on the build, but I don't plan to record the videos. If you'd prefer to see the video of the gameplay and would want me to record that in the future, then please let me know, but I don't think we'll be doing that this time. So the first thing we'll do is sort by the rares. I guess I'll hide the basics. And it looks like we have 5 basic mountains that we opened. And that means we opened 1 dual land in the basic land slot. So one weird thing about the set is that these dual lands are at the common rarity, but they're actually not filling the common slots in a pack. Some packs will have basic lands, some will have checklist cards, and then others will have these dual lands. So I think the rate is 5 out of every 12 packs have a dual land, so you get about 2 per sealed. In this case we got 2, but one of them is a foil, so that was a little bonus. So let's go ahead and hide the basics, sort by rarity, see what we're working with here. So we have an Ajani, which Planeswalker is usually pretty good in limited. You want a board presence with this one because it puts counters on up to 2 creatures that we control. I haven't read a lot of the rares and mythics for the set. Like I said, I reviewed commons and uncommons, but I'll have to read a lot of the cards as we go through here. Okay, and get a little bit of value with the -2, but in limited, your 2-drops probably aren't that great to be returning, so it's mostly there for the +1. I guess 4 mana goes up to 5 loyalty. So if you do have 2 creatures on board, it's going to be pretty hard to attack through to attack Ajani profitably. So as long as you have a board presence, this looks like quite a strong Planeswalker. And then the -7, yeah, will probably win you the game. It gives you inevitability, at least. Then we have the Spirit Lord, but in limited, I don't think we're really going to have Spirit, so it's mostly just a 2/1 or a 2-mana 1/3 flyer. Let's see, don't know what this card does. Choose a creature, enchanted creature is a copy of the chosen creature. Yeah, that's unplayable. Dragons are usually pretty good, so 5 mana 5/5 flyer, and this is the Punisher mechanic, but basically it's a 5 mana 5/5 flyer regardless, and then maybe has some additional benefit. 2 amulets. These are awful rares to open. These are like very narrow sideboard cards for supposedly modern, but I don't even know if it's that good against the Storm deck in modern, which is, I hate this design because it's so obviously trying to target that very specific archetype. Doesn't seem like very clever card design there, but definitely not playing that for limited. So we have 3 pretty bad rares here, 2 pretty good cards, and then 1 that is basically uncommon power level, a 1/3 flyer for 2. So we have a red card and a white card that are worth building around, and we'll see what the rest of our colors have to offer. I mean, a Murder is quite good. don't remember what this bookcase does. So it's an 0-4, and then it can make something unblockable. It's a fine defender, holds the ground, and then will allow you to get through on the ground later and win the game. But the problem is it doesn't block on that turn. So when you're, if it had, vigilance, that wouldn't work either. When you have to tap it on your turn to get a blocker through, or get an attacker through, you're not blocking with it anymore, so you need even more creatures out to really gum up the ground. So I don't know about this one. I mean, I think it's playable, but I don't think it's great. Diamond Mare is the 1/3 that you gain life based on the color that you choose every time you cast a spell of that color. I think this card is fine. It's probably not what you want in sealed. A 2-mana 1/3 just doesn't really do anything, so unless you have life gain synergies, it's not very powerful. I'm looking at all the colorless cards first and the uncommons, just because those can go in any particular deck that we choose. So our 3 best cards are all in 3 different colors at this point. 4 mana, draw 3 is pretty good. This one's an artifact synergy card, so it's unlikely that we're going to have much use for this in sealed. Maybe it's a fine draft card, but we're not going to get to build around it here. Enigma Drake is decent, just an X4 flyer in blue-red. Don't know how many spells we'll have, but it's just a decent card. I think the Exclusion Mage is really good, right? So this is the Mana War. 3 mana to play a 2/2 and bounce a creature. So those are definitely strong cards here. Make a Stand is okay. Oh, this is the Oblivion Ring. It exiles a non-land permanent, so I think that is relevant. There are a decent amount of artifacts and potentially enchantments that are playable, so 4 mana to exile anything is quite a strong effect. This 1-drop, I don't think... Oh, that's not the one I was thinking of. 1 mana 2/3. It's good defense, but you have to be able to equip it in order to activate its ability to allow it to attack. Maybe if you're playing enchantments, but again, I think that's more of a draft mechanic. I don't see any enchantments so far that we were planning on playing. 1 gold card here. So 2/4 flyer. If you gain life, you create a 1/1 bat creature token. It's okay. It's not very good. I think if it had lifelink, it would be much more playable. I know Newmont had this in one of his sealed decks. I think his first sealed pool, and he was playing black-white, and it really wasn't very impressive. And he had a decent amount of lifelink in his creature base, so if it wasn't impressive in his build, I don't think it's going to be a great card. Again, more of a draft card. The gold uncommons, maybe you can build around them more in draft, and they're stronger, but here in sealed deck, that's not going to be much of a big payoff. And that's really all of our uncommons. The Volley Veteran comes into play and is sort of a Flame Tongue Kavu, but only deals 1 damage, so you need more goblins out in order to take advantage of it. And so far in our uncommon slot, in our rare slot, we only have like 2 red cards, a couple blue cards, a couple black cards, and a couple white cards. So we're kind of scattered throughout here. There's no reason to be playing green so far in our pool. So let's go ahead and sort by color. We can see that green and red are not very deep. We have 2 druids, which are the ramp 2-drop. So those go well with the Dreadmaws, but other than that, green doesn't really have anything. And I think that's true of green in general. I didn't see much in the common and uncommon slots to attract me to green. And I'm not sad to see that we don't have a lot of green cards here in our pool, because I don't really want to play that color anyway. As far as red goes, we have a dragon here, which is a 5 mana 3/3. And if the game goes long, it can be a 2-for-1, dealing 3 damage to a creature. 8 mana is a lot, though, so I don't know how reliable that is. And then we have the 5 mana rare dragon that we saw earlier. the Volley Veteran, and then nothing else is really playable here. The Goblin Instigator is fine. The Goblin Motivator is fine. It's the 1 mana 1/1 that grants other creatures haste. But I'd say we're probably not playing red unless one of our other colors is very deep. Like if we play blue, we can play blue-red, and then we can play the Enigma Drake. Our mana fixing, that's another important thing to look at, to understand what our limitations are in deck building. We have a green fixer, which is unlikely to do anything because we have no good green cards to splash. We do have a blue-white land, so that would give us potential ability to splash, either to fix our mana in this blue-white deck, which does seem to be our two deepest colors, or if we played blue-red, we can splash the Oblivion Ring, whatever that's called, the Hieromancer's Cage. So we might be able to splash that in a blue-red deck. Looking at the rest of the artifacts, we have Marauder's Axe. 2 mana to equip is not too bad. It gives the creature +2/+0. So if you have a bunch of tokens or an aggressive curve and you want to give your 2-drops better value in the late game, it seems playable. It seems fine. Manalith is a mana fixer, but I'd want to pair it with card draw so that we can make up for the card disadvantage of playing just a mana rock, which means I like to play that with a blue, probably with divinations, and we do have 2 divinations here, so that is certainly an option. 2 bounce spells in blue also. So between our exclusion mages and our 2 totally lost, we have a lot of ways to bounce and interact with our opponent after they've resolved the spell. And we also have 3 Essence Scatters, which seems really strong. So I'm liking the look of blue here. And we have 2 of this Guardian, which is as long as you control a blue creature. Okay, so it's basically a 5 mana 5/5 most of the time. And looking at our pool, we have a lot of blue cards. So I would imagine that artifact will be a 5 mana 5/5, which seems pretty good. It's a Colossipede with no color restriction. Well, basically it's a blue Colossipede, I guess. Blue doesn't really get that kind of a body very often, so I think it's probably good. So let's assume that we're blue-white. We'll take a quick look at black first. I like to rule out colors rather than focus on what my best colors are. That way it helps me narrow down how I'm going to build the pool. So 4/2 with Menace, you got 2 of those, I don't think that card is great since there are multiple ways to kill an X2 pretty cheaply, and there's shock in the format. I think some of the other removal kills it pretty easily. And the Menace really doesn't do that much against a 4/2 body. If you block it with a 2/2 and a 2/3, it's a very bad trade for the 4/2. Epicure of Blood is, I think, a pretty strong card, but it requires building around it to some extent, so you'd have to see what kind of synergies we have. This is just a big dumb creature. We do have 1 good removal spell in black, and we have the card draw spell, and the murder. So we have 2 good unconditional removal spells here. 2 good flyers. This is a removal spell, and we would play it, but I don't think it's very good. 4 mana for -3/-3 is not a very good rate. I don't like auras like this. 2 mana 2/2s just don't do anything. Life gain spell doesn't do anything. Reassembling Skeleton is pretty good, just as like a infinite blocker. If you have sacrifice synergies, it gets a lot better, which I don't think we have in this deck. And we're not playing the red cards probably, because red-black is where the sacrifice synergies come in. So I don't think we're going to make great use of this card, but it's probably still getting played in any black deck if we do go that route. This one's a little bit better than the aura, because it can be used as a combat trick, and it lets you rebuy a creature with an enter the battlefield effect if we have those. I mean, the blood letters give you a little bit of upside when they enter play, and the exclusion mages would be pretty good with the endurance, so it could be decent in blue-black, for example. But basically, we could see we have what is this, like 8 playable black cards? Yeah. 8 playable black cards, and a lot of them are spells. So we have 4 creatures and 4 spells. So if we paired that with a white or blue color, then we'd want a pretty decent creature base in that other color to supplement our black. And unfortunately, we can't really splash any of these cards. We could splash the Blood Divination, but splashing Murder or the Caress is probably out, as they are double black. And if we're playing blue, we already have a couple divinations, so it's probably unlikely that we would want to splash this card draw spell as well. So it's looking like blue-white will be sort of obvious build here. But I think we should also look at blue-red, depending on what our white has to offer. And the fact that we have a Johnny means that we're probably just blue-white. I don't know what this knight is. Oh, is this the 3/7? Yeah. Guess let's just go ahead and pull all the blue-white cards into our deck building space. Let's pull the land aside. Let's pull the Manolith aside in case we want to splash. The blue-white land means we could maybe add a couple basics of another color and then play the Manolith and use that as our way to splash. Looking at our pool, though, don't really see anything that I am interested in splashing in this deck. The card draw, like I said, is an option. What is this land? Oh yes, this is not a very good multicolor land. Just taxes you too much when it comes into play. There's really nothing splashable here. So yeah, I think we're just going to be straight blue-white. Let's go ahead and figure out what the good cards are. This defender maybe is playable. Let's separate these creatures and spells. Bring a bookcase in, see if that fits in with our game plan or not. Bring in the Colossipede. So if we want these artifacts to be good, we really need to play all of our blue creatures. It looks like we don't actually have that many. A lot of our blue cards are spells. So these aren't going to be great in our deck. What is this? Secret. Salvager of Secrets. Target instance or sorcery. Well, we have a lot of spells to return, but a 5-mana 2/2 is a pretty bad rate. So I'm not sure how valuable that is. I mean, it gives you a lot of card advantage with the divinations, and it gives us a rebuy on our counter spells. But a 5-mana 2/2, it really depends on the format, whether that card is going to be good or not. This Drill Master is only an aggressive card, 2-mana 2/1, and it enables attacks, but it does nothing on defense. So these two will not be in the same deck. 2-mana 1/3 and the 2-mana 2/1s. And this is a 2-mana 3/1. I hate all of these cards that are X1s. This has really no effect on the game. There are a lot of 1/3s in the format, or ways to punish X1s. There's Plague Mare, gosh, I can't remember. I think there's tokens. Yeah, we saw in the in red there's the Goblin Instigator. Anyway, in my review I listed 5 or 6 different reasons why I thought that the 3/1 vanilla creatures were going to be pretty bad in this format. So I really don't want to play this. And I think the same would be true of this 2-mana 2/1. So now we've got a pair of early blockers with the 2-mana 1/3s, and we have the 2-mana 0/4 and the 1-mana 2/3. So we have a lot of early defense if we want it. And then we have Mana Wars on turn 3. This guy. Power 2 or less. Okay, so we look at the top 4 and look for a creature with power 2 or less. We have a lot of those. It can find us our Mana Wars. It can find us all of our cheaper creatures here at the early part of the curve. Now, what we do want to know is, are there other creatures on other part of the curve that are good? A lot of 2-mana 1/3s. Here's a 4 mana 3/3s, 4 mana 2/4s. So this one we can hit. Seems like another good defensive card. We know that we can hit this 5 mana 2/2, so that's another reason that this might be playable in our deck. It goes well with the Bugler. Alright, so I'm starting to see the formation of a game plan here. In blue-white, usually you would expect the game plan to be to win with flyers. Now, I don't see many flyers here on the early part of our curve, but we do have a lot of good blockers to hold the ground, and then hopefully we can win in the air afterwards. We're kind of long on ways to hold the ground. We have the 0/4s, the 1/3s, the 2/3s. We have these 6 mana 3/7s. I'm sure we're not going to play all of these, but they're all options in our deck. What I'm lacking is the flyer part of the package. So we get some tempo with the Exclusion Mages. We have one flyer here with the Snapping Drake. We have a sort of evasive threat here with the Sea Serpent. It's mana intensive, but if the ground is really locked up, it is a win condition for us. The Angel, I think, is a very strong common. It's going to be a great way to turn a race in our favor, giving both the pump and the vigilance ability. I think that'll be a very strong curve topper for any white deck who's looking to attack. What else do we have for aggressive cards? We have this 4 mana 3/3, which taps down a blocker when it attacks. This guy wants artifacts in play, but it otherwise is a 4 mana 3/2, and since we don't have any artifacts, I think this is probably going to get cut. Same with this one. So this is a 4 mana 3/3. Artifact creature gets +2/+2. The only artifact creatures we have are the Bookcase, and we could play the Diamond Mares, but I don't really see a reason for us to put those in our deck. So I think this card gets cut as well. So you can see we really don't have the flyers for this deck. So this won't be an optimal build for blue-white, but I do think it's the best that we have available. 2 mana, or a 3 mana 2/3, return an artifact from the graveyard to your hand. Again, we're pretty short on artifacts here, and I don't think we have any that we can really realistically put into play in our deck. Maybe we play the Marauder's Axe. The Bookcase does look like it will be good in this deck, though, because, as I was saying, there's no flyers really to speak of, so we're going to have a pretty stalled ground, and then at some point we'll be able to activate this, put our Gearsmith Guardians into combat and kill our opponent in just a couple turns. So let's look at some of these spells. We're going to have to make a lot of cuts down there. Oh yeah, this one we know is bad. Essence Scatters, I think I probably just want to play all of them. I like them a lot in Sealed. Answers any creature, and we don't have that many 2-drops anyway, so it'll be a good opportunity for us to scatter something. We know we're going to be playing this removal spell. I would like to play these Totally Lost. Maybe we just play one. Ajani, we need to make sure we have a low enough curve to make use of it, so that makes me want to keep in things like the Bookcase and the 1/3s, and maybe the Knight. I mean, this equipment will get better with the Knight. I don't think we have any other enchantments or equipments that we want to put on it. Life gain card, that can go. It does cantrip, but it also costs 2 mana to basically do nothing. Mighty Leap, I think, is a good trick in this deck. Probably don't need more than that. Make a Stand, I don't think I want to play. Alright, Dwindle is basically a terminate in this deck. All we want to do is answer our opponent's threats, and then eventually we'll be able to get through with a Serpent or a Bookcase activation or some flyers, so I'm not really worried about leaving our opponent with a blocker. Plus it only blocks for one turn anyway, so no big deal. So this is definitely going to get played. Let's go ahead and cut one Totally Lost. I think we have a few pieces of interaction here, so we don't need the Totally Lost as well. I want to play both Divinations. I think we can cut the Cancel, because we have a bunch of Essence Scatters. If our opponent plays, a Planeswalker or some spell we need to answer, we can bring that in over an Essence Scatter, potentially. This Make a Stand, I think, is cuttable. We end up with a lot of creatures we have to cut down on as well here. The Knight can probably go. We only have one equipment. One of these Knights can probably go. It's just at least one of them, maybe both. It's just so expensive. I don't know if we even want both of these Gearsmith Guardians. We only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blue creatures, so it will only be turned on some of the time. Otherwise, it's a 5-mana 3/5, which is still, a good blocker. So maybe we keep it. Maybe the Secrets is a sideboard card in a grindier matchup. Gets us down to 27 cards. This is a 3-mana 2/3 because we only have a couple of artifacts. I mean, it's possible that we want it to buy back a Guardian if those are some of our bigger threats. I don't know, maybe for that reason these Guardians are actually okay with the Artificer. And what was the other blue card? Yeah, you want cheaper artifacts for this guy. And we really don't have that, because you can't carve this into the Guardian. It doesn't really do you any good. If we played both Bookcases, this could be a little bit better. Then we'd have 3 2-mana artifacts, and then this is activated some of the time. I could see that being good in this deck. Just a 2-mana 0/4 will do a lot of blocking and get us to the late game. In that case, maybe this goes. 6-mana 3/7 just doesn't seem very good. The Marauder's Axe also looks pretty bad in this deck. If we had more flyers, like a natural blue-white flyer deck, then the equipment seems like it gets better, because you have an evasive threat. But in our case, we're mostly looking to just block, 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 and then attack for 5 a few times. I wonder if Mighty Leap is even bad in this deck. Yeah, I don't think we need... Mighty Leap provides you that ability to jump a creature and get in for like a quick point of damage, finish your opponent off after they've stabilized, but we're not really looking to pressure our opponent that quickly. If we needed it to block flyers, I could see that being more of an argument. But we have a few flyers of our own. We have some removal spells, we have counter spells, so I don't think we really need that. So cards that I definitely don't want to cut. I think these 4-drops are all good. The stag is quite good. It basically acts as a removal spell once we start attacking. It's probably worse in this deck because we're going to stall the ground and our opponents are going to have a lot of creatures in play at some point. But it can also just win games or force your opponent to start racing when they don't want to. So I think it's just a generically good card, and we'll keep it here. The Angel is, as I said, quite good as well, and these Guardians are kind of what we're trying to maximize in this deck. Maybe that's the wrong way of looking at it, but it just seems like one of our better threats in this pool, or at least in this color combination, besides the Ajani. With the 2 bookcases, maybe we don't need this, random 2-mana 1/3. It's very underpowered, and I don't know that we need to protect ourselves from an aggressive curve all that much. At least like the other 3 2-drops that we have here have some sort of ability. 2-mana 1/3 flyer, good block error in the air, and can also chip in for some damage. And then these bookcases can serve as late game win conditions. So I like all of that, which means we need one more cut. Now, I think the Pack Beast can give us some decent value, rebuying our 4 artifact creatures here. But at the same time, I think it's our weakest creature, so I might as well just cut it. I think this gets us to 23 cards that I'm happy to play. I don't see anything here that stands out as being underpowered. It's all synergizing pretty well. Early, efficient blockers in the early game. Decently sized either beef or evasion in the latter part of our curve, and then just a good amount of interaction, removal spells, or counter spells, which will effectively be removal spells, and some card draw, plus a Planeswalker. So I think this deck has a game plan. I think it's the best deck that our pool has to offer. And we can't forget our dual land here, so let's go ahead and put that in. Add some lands. Probably just going to be, well, I was going to say an even split. With the dual land, I would have expected to go 8-8, but I think based on this color split, we'll go 9-7. And that still gives us 8 sources for our turn 4 Ajani. So this is the deck. Let me know if there's something that you think I should have either looked at in terms of color pairs or cards that you think should be in the deck or are not in the deck. Changes to this particular build. But I think blue-white is obviously the best deck in this particular sealed pool. And I'll go ahead and run this, and I'll let you know how it goes in the comments. Well, I guess quickly before I do that, I will look at blue-red for you. I think not playing a Planeswalker and some of the, the removal and the Angel, it just doesn't make sense to not play white. But we'll go ahead and give it a quick look here. No, I'm not actually going to do that. There's no reason to do it. There's no reason to play red. We have the Drake and the Dragon, but other than that, our white is just too good. So that's it. That's our deck, and I'll go ahead and submit it and tell you how it goes.